Hello everyone, candidate master Ranveer Mohite here, and in this video I am going to show you traps in the Ruy Lopez for white and for black. I have been playing Ruy Lopez for the last 12 years. Now as a young child I would really hope that some of my opponents would fall into the trap. Whenever they did, I would win a piece, I would be very happy, and it would just make my task of winning the game from there very easy. Many of the traps in this video are for new players or for players who are learning this opening for the first time. For advanced players who have already been playing this opening, there are still a few traps that you may not know. I hope you enjoy it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start by presenting you the traps with black first, and then I'm going to present you the traps with white. Okay, it's just a personal choice. Enjoy it. Let's begin. So white goes e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. This is the Ruy Lopez opening. The move a6, it's the main line, bishop c6, dc6. Now this capture, this move, bishop c6, dc6, this used to be my favorite move in my childhood, because I always believed that after you eliminate this knight, there is nobody to protect this pawn. So as white, I would often play here knight to e5. Okay, and I would be very happy, I've won a free pawn. But the difference is, there is nobody to guard this pawn and this knight. And the black queen can sweep in like this and attack both your pawn and the knight. So if your knight runs away, now the queen will capture on e4. White plays queen e2, black takes, king takes, and now this position is materially equal. But the thing is, black has two bishops, which gives them a slight better position to play. After I learned that after queen d4 you lose this pawn, I stopped playing it and I switched to the main line. So the second trap is, again, it starts after e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5. Black plays knight f6, castle, and now black plays knight g4. Not a good move. White rightly plays h3, asking this knight what it is doing here. It should go back. But now black decides to sacrifice the knight with h5. And now if white takes, which is what happens in the game in this trap, you take back. Now you have an open file for your rook, and this pawn hits this knight. So if you move the knight, now your queen jumps into the attack with queen to h4. Okay, now there is a checkmate here. White could try to run away with f4. But now you play the move g3. You control this square so that this king cannot escape here. And now no matter what white plays, there's going to be a checkmate on h1. For example, if they take this pawn, the next move you play queen h1 and it's going to be a checkmate. The correct way to play here for white is just to ignore that there is a knight here, because currently there is no threat that this knight is giving. So white can simply continue with his development. They can play d4, and it's a very good position for white, because this knight eventually at some point will have to retreat after white finishes off all the development. The next trap. e4, black plays e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, knight f6, d3. Okay, now this knight is attacking this pawn, so white decides to go here d3. And now black plays a very strange looking move here, knight to e7. They want to bring their knight here, but by moving their knight to e7, they have forgotten that there is nobody to defend this pawn. White becomes greedy. White sees a free pawn, white takes it. And now this is where the trap begins. Black has a sneaky little pawn move, c6, hitting this bishop. And now if the bishop retreats, you have this check. And you're hitting the king, you're hitting the knight, and you're hitting the bishop. You're going to win one of the piece. Like white can play knight c3, but they'll lose this knight. Okay? But white has something clever. Instead of playing bishop to a4, white can play knight c4, setting up a very clever trick. If you capture on b5 now and become greedy with the bishop, you could get checkmated with knight d6. Okay, you don't want that. Okay, instead you just have to play a very simple move like d6. Alright, now there is no checkmate here. This bishop is attacked. Once it moves away, you move the pawn and you fork. Ask white what is he gonna give. Now if let's say the bishop goes, you can capture this knight and you have an extra knight in the position, and hopefully you will be able to win this game if you don't blunder your pieces. Let's move on to the next trap. So again, we have the Ruy Lopez, a6, this is the main line, bishop a4, d6, d4, and now here black plays b5, hitting out at this bishop, This bishop moves, and now black captures. Knight captures, black captures, queen captures. Black sees a very nice opportunity to trap this bishop. So they play the move c5. First hitting this queen. Now where will the queen go? If the queen goes here, black simply plays c4 and traps this bishop. It's goodbye bishop. After this, black has an extra bishop in their position and they should be able to win the game. What white does is they decide to play the move queen d5. White is threatening a checkmate, and also white is threatening an attack on this rook. Black has to play bishop e6 first. Okay, remember, you don't want to play c4 here, otherwise you'll be bye rook. So you first play bishop e6, put the bishop in the middle, queen c6 check, and now you come back with the bishop again and attack this queen. Now if the queen goes back, now there is no bishop here, so which means our queen can protect this rook, and now you can play the move c4 because this rook is guarded, so white queen cannot capture here. And after c4, this bishop is gonna die. Bishop c4, bc4, queen c4. Black is once again left with an extra piece. Now I will show you Ruy Lopez traps with white. This trap, I often had the pleasure of executing it in my childhood, and I had a lot of fun, lot of nice memories, lot of victories with this. So white plays e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, standard Ruy Lopez, bishop c5, castle, d6, and now here you play the move c3. Okay, once again in the principles of Ruy Lopez, it is you have to fight for the center, and c3 d4 is a very common idea. Now black plays knight to f6, already a big blunder. Now white plays d4, first hitting this bishop goes back, and now white plays d5. This knight is pinned by the bishop and it's gonna be grilled by the pawn. Black could try to play a6, but this bishop simply goes back to a4, and there is no way to protect this knight. Black can play bishop d7, but they'll lose the knight, and white has an extra knight, and they should be able to win the position. So instead, the correct way for black, instead of going knight f6, it is to play the move a6 here. Now if the bishop goes to a4, now black can play knight f6, and after d4, they can put this bishop back on a7. Now after d5, you still get a bad position, but at least after b5, you're not losing a piece. Okay, after b5, if let's say white captures, you can capture this bishop. But let's say if white decides to retreat, you can retreat with the knight. So let's move on to the next trap. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, bishop c5, castle, d6, c3, bishop e6. Now, whenever this bishop gets developed to e6, it's not a good square, at least in the Ruy Lopez opening. Okay, usually this bishop, it doesn't get developed to e6. It will either get developed after b5 to bishop b7, or it will just get developed to d7. e6 is not a good square, it's a very awkward square. So now white plays the move d4, hitting this bishop. And now this bishop moves back, you play the move d5. And all of a sudden, there is a double attack on the bishop and the knight. Black can play b5, but okay, white is simply going to run away with the bishop. And again, the problem remains. What are you going to do? Which piece are you going to give? If the black bishop goes, you simply capture the knight, and you have an extra knight, and you have a fantastic position. And if you don't blunder your pieces, you're going to win this game. Next trap, we have once again the standard Ruy Lopez, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, and now knight e4. Now this is known as the open variation of the Ruy Lopez. In this position, white gives up one pawn, but it's okay because they can very soon recover that pawn. So white plays here d4, b5, bishop b3, and ed4. And now this is a very dangerous move to make. Why? Because it opens up this line for the rook. So you play rook e1, attacking this knight. Now what is this knight gonna do? They could play f5, but f5 is met with knight d4. And now after queen h4, you play the move g3, hitting at this queen. If you miss, if you let's say play something like this, you could lose this pawn. Okay, you don't want that. So here you play the move g3, hitting back at the queen. Queen runs away. And now you can take, black takes, and now f3, pinning this knight. It cannot run, because if it does, this king will say, why did you run away? So black has to play something like bishop e7. You take the knight, and you are left with an extra knight to play in this position. Next trap, e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5, a6, bishop a4, knight f6, castle, knight e4, This is again the open Ruy Lopez. Again you play here d4. Black plays b5, which is the right move. Bishop b3, d5. In the last game we saw you don't capture e into d4. Otherwise after rook e1 there are serious problems along this e file. So here black plays d5. Now you play d into e5, and now your bishop and your queen are attacking on this pawn. So black has to play bishop e6. Their bishop and queen protect the pawn. White continues with c3, bishop e7, rook e1, short castle, and now here white decides to play the move knight to d4. And now black makes a huge blunder by playing queen to d7. Can you see how it can punish it? Put it in the comments below. Alright, so here white plays the move knight to e6. And no matter how black captures, they are going to lose a free piece. Because if they capture with the pawn, you just capture this knight. And they cannot capture here, otherwise bye queen. So if they capture with the queen, once again you can capture this knight with your rook. And now once again they cannot capture this rook, because if they do, it will be again bye queen. Maybe they'll play a move like rook a8. You can simply put your rook back. You are a healthy bishop up. Okay, you have an extra minor piece, and if you don't blunder the pieces, you're gonna win the game. That's it from my side. I hope you enjoyed watching the video. Subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.